item 16, psychoactive products. Andrew, your specialty.
So shall I move this to put it on the table?
Yep. Would you like to move it? And who else was on your hearings panel? Phil. Thank you, guys. Okay, do you guys want to outline, or do you want to outline anything before we ask any questions, or do you want to do that?
I can make some comments.
Yep, sure.
I chaired the hearings panel, and I'm certainly happy to make some comments on the report. This was a particularly difficult set of deliberations. The hearings panel, in fact, met 3 times in the end. The submissions that we heard and the written submissions essentially fell into 3 categories. People that didn't want the sale of psychoactive products in the suburbs, or in some cases didn't want the sale of psychoactive products at all. People that didn't want the sale of psychoactive products in the city centre, and some of those also were saying ideally they wouldn't want the sale of psychoactive products at all. And then there was another smaller group of submitters who were the retailers who were involved in running the shops that sell these things, and of course they took a more business-oriented approach, wanting to be able to locate their businesses in areas where they felt either they would perform well, or perhaps in some cases in areas where they'd previously been running. So finding the balance between these was a real challenge, and given the requirements of the Act, the purpose of the Act is that we must give a reasonable opportunity to retailers to be able to retail these products. To do that in the context of the submissions that we received certainly provoked a lot of thought, and we took quite a bit of advice over the 3 meetings, and there was quite a lot of discussion and deliberation. So we took the preferred option which had come out of the previous debates that Council had and looked at the central city rather than the suburbs, and within the central city area attempted to look at the parts of the central city which were most appropriate and perhaps not so appropriate. So we've got this A3 map which has been provided to councillors, and we ended up with the Schedule 1 map, which was the broad area where the sale of psychoactive products would be allowed. But then if you turn the sheet over, we come to the map which has got the indicative sensitive sites on there, and that obviously restricts the area quite a lot further. And one of the things that we needed to take into account with this was the ability for the businesses to be able to establish in an area of a size that was workable, and at the same time bearing in mind the particular types of sensitive sites that we felt needed to be in there to protect the users of those sites and the activities that were happening on the sites. So we did in fact add a number of sites to the ones that had been noted in the preferred option. The Avon River Precinct, on the basis that we felt that it was essentially a reserve, behaved like a reserve. The bus interchange and bus super stops, on the basis that people that are waiting there for public transport need to remain there and wait, and therefore the activity didn't sit well against an area where people needed to be and needed to wait. The Justice and Emergency Services Precinct and Health Precinct, similarly, areas that people need to attend. There's not a lot of choice in needing to go to those places. So again, areas where large numbers of the general public, including vulnerable members of the general public, would be, and therefore areas that we felt needed to be protected as sensitive sites. The Washington Way Skate Park, obviously speaking to the fact that that's younger people that use that, and again, it's a park, and the Margaret May Family Playground for the same reasons. So where we ended was on the map that you see, which has got the sensitive sites in there, and we feel that we've struck a reasonable balance between the issues raised in the original debate when we came up to with the preferred option, what we heard through the submissions process from all parties, and the need to give a reasonable geographical area which is workable for the retailers to conduct their business.
Enzo, But the hearing panel, actually, you in favor is attachment 1 or attachment 3. Attachment 1 is kind of the, the permitted area, but attachment 3 is a permitted area, but specify the sensitive site location. So which one? Even 8.1 is only attachment 1.
So attachment 1 is the permitted area, but then obviously there are the rules around the sensitive sites. So attachment 3 is an indicative map which shows how the permitted area responds to the sensitive sites. So attachment 1 is the area, but once you overlay the sensitive sites over that, attachment 3 is those places where the activity could actually take place. Maybe staff would respond to that.
The area is attachment 1, Jimmy, but because of the sensitive sites which are part of the policy, that area shrinks because of the proximity to the sensitive sites.
That's correct. So attachment 1 is part of the policy. Attachment 3 is really just to illustrate what that looks like on the ground. At the time the panel looked at this, clearly some of those sensitive sites are static, so the bus interchange isn't going to move, but potentially other ones like schools and preschools, there might be new ones that are set up later, so that we couldn't put that map into the policy because it will change over time.
I just note the down the side there you've got the various categories: mental health, etc., etc. I thought churches were a part of that group, and has that been factored into this downsized map at all? I mean, I see Cathedral Square is sort of pretty much a site, and some of the old church sites that have been demolished and maybe want to be rebuilt on, are they don't appear to be factored into that map at all.
No. Certainly churches were not, churches or places of worship were not identified as sensitive sites in the proposal the council put out. I'm trying to think whether we had any submissions on it, can't actually remember, but certainly...
My understanding, I thought they were classified...
No, they weren't, not in the proposal. They weren't.
Okay.
And one of the difficulties we always have around churches and places of worship in these sorts of policies is that you get into difficult definitions of what's a place of worship. It certainly wasn't part of the proposal, and it's not part of what the panel is now proposing.
If I may, there is still a state school to be established in the centre of town. Is it possible that we could include any site designated to be the site of a school that will be built within the next 10 years or 2 years? 2 years, sorry. Is it possible to do that? I'm just aware that businesses setting up and then having to
We do try to allow for that. I'm just trying to think where it is in the policy. Okay, so on page 263, under sensitive sites E, so what it talks about there is that any site, at the time someone applies for a new licence to set up a retail premises,
okay.
So if we've been notified...
Thank you, I hadn't picked that up, that's excellent. Yep. Thank you. And I noticed that the library is not regarded as sensitive either, yep. But I noticed you considered it, disregarded it, yep. Ali.
I just wanted to ask around the places of worship issue again. I know that you talked about, I think if I understood you correctly, the difficulty in actually ascertaining what a place of worship is. Would it not be fair to assume that one could reasonably expect a church to be a place of worship? I mean, why can't we at least put things down that are currently used as and clearly used as a place of worship?
Well, again, there are some procedural issues and there's some practical issues. So in practical terms, we will get into the issue of there's churches, but there's other types of religion that don't have churches, and we do get into that question of what exactly is a place of worship and how is that defined. In terms of actually procedural issues, that wasn't part of the proposal, and it probably would be a pretty significant change for the council to have added in either through the hearings panel process or at this point in time. So you couldn't say regular places? Procedurally, we can't add that in now. If you want to go down that track, you're back to a new proposal and a new SEP process.
The community centres sensitive sites?
Not in the council's proposal that we put out, nor the policy that's being proposed being recommended by the panel.
Okay, I would have been inclined to put them in and then call a church a community centre, personally. But
They're moved and seconded. Can I put those? Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Do you want your vote recorded against, Ali? Okay, Ali's vote recorded against. And the motion is passed. Thank you, guys. That was a lot of work involved in that. Thank you to the hearings panel and to the staff. We have done item